Chapter 8, third section. Computer security, or cybersecurity, IT security, is the protection of information systems from theft or damage to the hardware, software, to the information on any of them, from disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. Computer security includes controlling physical access to the hardware as well as protecting against harm that may come from network access, data, or code injection. It also involves protecting against harm through malpractice by operators, whether intentional or accidental, or because they've been tricked into deviating from secure procedures. Computer security covers all the processes and mechanisms by which digital equipment, information, and services are protected from unintended or unauthorized access, change, or destruction, and the process of applying security measures to ensure confidentiality and integrity and availability of data both in transit and at rest. The advancement and proliferation of technology has altered our lives in many ways. Some technologies, internet, email, have dramatically enhanced our ability to communicate and conduct business. But they also have some drawbacks. Most alarming is that these technologies have made us vulnerable to a whole new class of criminal activity. The anonymity of the internet, as well as the ability to search out potential victims quickly and effectively, has created incredible challenges for parents, educators, and law enforcement who are attempting to deter predators. Malware, malicious software, is any software used to disrupt computer operations, gather sensitive information, or gain access to private computer systems. Malware is defined by malicious intent, acting against the desires requirements of the computer user. It does not include software that causes unintentional harm due to some deficiency. The term badware sometimes is used for software that is harmful either unintentionally or maliciously. Malware is an umbrella term used to refer to a variety of forms of hostile or intrusive software, including viruses, worms, Trojan horses, ransomware, spyware, adware, scareware, and other malicious programs. Malware can take the form of executable code, of scripts, of active content, and other software. It's often disguised as or embedded in non-malicious files. As of 2011, the majority of active malware threats have been worms or Trojans rather than viruses. A computer virus is a type of malicious software program that, when it executes, replicates itself, copying its own source code and infecting other computer programs by modifying them. Infected computer programs can also include data files or, frequently, the boot sector on the hard drive. When the replication succeeds, the affected areas are said to be infected with the computer virus. The term virus is commonly used for other types of malware. It's wrong, but it's common. The defining characteristic of a virus is that it's self-replicating and it installs itself without user consent. A computer worm is a standalone computer program that replicates itself in order to spread to other computers. Often, the worm uses a computer network to spread itself, relying on security failures in the target computer. Worms almost always cause some harm to the network, even if just by consuming some bandwidth. Viruses almost always corrupt or modify files on a targeted computer. Probably the most common payload for a worm is to install a backdoor, allowing the computer to be remotely controlled by the worm's author, functioning as a zombie. A backdoor is a method of bypassing normal authentication. Networks of such machines are often referred to as botnets and are commonly used for a range of malicious purposes, including sending spam or performing DDoS attacks. A Trojan horse is a malicious computer program used to hack into a computer by misleading the users of its true intent. The term is derived from the Greek story of how the Greeks used a wooden horse to help their troops invade the city of Troy. Although the payload of a Trojan can be anything, most of the modern forms provide a backdoor, a contact controller, which uses the backdoor for unauthorized access to the affected computer. This kind of infection allows the attacker to access the user's personal information, like banking information, passwords, IP address, or it might allow them to download and install other malware, viruses, or worms. Unlike viruses and worms, Trojans generally do not attempt to inject themselves into other files or otherwise propagate themselves. Ransomware, a relatively recent phenomenon, computer malware that installs itself on the victim's computer and either holds the victim's data hostage or threatens to publish the data until some kind of a ransom is paid. That's why it's called ransomware. Spyware is software that aims to gather information about a person or organization without their knowledge. The spyware might probably will send this information to another entity without the consumer's consent. Spyware is mostly used for tracking and storing internet users' movements on the web and serving up pop-up ads to internet users. When it's used for malicious purposes, spyware is typically hidden from the users, and it can be quite difficult to detect. Some kinds of spyware, such as keyloggers, can be installed by the owner of a shared corporate or public computer intentionally in order to monitor users. Adware, or advertising supported software, is software package that automatically renders advertisements in order to generate revenue for the author. Adware often includes functions designed to analyze which internet sites the user visits and to present advertising pertinent to the types of goods or services featured there. The term adware sometimes gets used to refer to software that displays unwanted advertisements, and this type of adware certainly falls into the classification of malware. In legitimate software, not malware, the advertising functions are integrated into or bundled with the program. Adware is seen by the developer as a way to recover development costs, and in some cases, it may allow the software to be provided to the user free of charge or at greatly reduced price. Some software is offered in both an advertising supported mode and a paid advertisement free mode. The advertisement free mode usually available by the online purchase of a license or registration code that unlocks that mode. Or it can be available as by purchasing a separate version of the software. Internet security writers use the term scareware to describe software products that produce frivolous and alarming warnings or threat notices. Usually, these are for fictitious or useless commercial firewall and registry cleaner software. The software is often packaged with a look and feel that mimics legitimate security software in order to deceive potential consumers. Cookies are small files that are stored on a user's computer. They're designed to hold a small amount of data specific to a particular client and website that can be accessed either by the web server or the client computer. A cookie allows information to be carried from one visit to the website or a related site to a next without having to burden the server with massive amounts of data storage. Lots of people are worried that cookies are a security problem, but in themselves, cookies are not a major threat to privacy. They can only be used to store information that the user has volunteered or that the web server already has. Some commercial websites do include embedded advertising material, which is served from a third-party site, and it is possible for such ads to store a cookie for that third-party site. Such a tracking cookie could contain information fed to it from the containing site, and such information might include the name of the site, particular products being viewed, pages visited, so forth. Many people see such tracking cookies as an invasion of privacy, since they allow the advertiser to build up profiles of users without their consent or knowledge. It's getting harder and harder to maintain and manage access and at the same time protect both the identity of the user and the data and the computer system. Central to the security is the concept of authentication, that is, verifying that a user is who he claims to be. There are three ways that authentication can be done: by something that the user knows, password, personal identification number; something the user has, a smart card, a security token; or something the user is, physical characteristic, called a biometric. Biometric authentication is generally considered to be the closest to being foolproof, at least in the sense that it's hardest to forge, or spoof. Since the early 1900s, systems of identification and authentication based on physical characteristics have been available to enterprise IT, but the early biometric systems were slow, intrusive, and expensive. But now, over 30 years later, computers are faster and cheaper, and hardware in general is cheaper. Thus, the availability of less expensive hardware has resulted in an increased interest and use of biometrics. Because of the convenience and ease of use, fingerprint authentication has become the biometric technology of widest choice. A growing number of notebook PCs and computer peripherals are coming to market with built-in fingerprint readers. Almost 50 million people subscribed to some form of identity theft protection this was in 2010. These services cost somewhere between $100 and $300 a year. They promise to protect identification by monitoring credit reports, scouring black market chat rooms for your personal information, removing your name from marketing lists, and filing fraud reports. Some of them throw in up to $1 million in insurance. Many of these services come from banks, which account for more than half of the 3.5 billion a year spent on ID theft protection subscriptions. In a sense, consumers who buy this protection from banks are in fact paying them to do what they're already required to do. You're buying a protection that they're already a service that they're already required to provide. Federal law requires banks shield their customers from losses stemming from credit card and bank account fraud. These protection plans and provide questionable value, and some promoters of the services have been charged by the Federal Trade Commission for misleading sales practices and false claims. Not to say that identity theft is not a serious problem. In 2010, there were over 8 million identity fraud victims, and this was down 27% from 2009. Clearly, this is a serious problem. But the number, 8.1 million victims, overstates the danger significantly. More than 80% of what is reported as identity theft involves fraudulent charges on existing accounts, not really identity theft. Very often, identity theft and other breaches of security as well is brought about by psychological manipulation, often called social engineering. Social engineering can take many forms. The simplest form is just a phone call. Often you can get the information you're looking for just by asking for it. More sophisticated schemes have come to enjoy some public notoriety called phishing and spear phishing. Phishing is a technique for getting private information by sending emails that seem to come from legitimate sources, banks, credit card companies, so forth. Emails asking for verification of information, warning of some kind of consequence if the requested information isn't verified. The email usually has a link to a web page that looks legitimate, in fact is fraudulent. This web page will have a form that requests information like home address, PIN number for an ATM or credit card number. Phishing attempts are generally in bulk, sent out lots of emails hoping for a few people to fall for it. When they are directed at specific individuals or companies, it's called spear phishing. In contrast to bulk phishing, spear phishing attackers gather and use personal information about their target to increase their probability of success. Spear phishing gained a lot of notoriety when it was learned that the tactic had been used to gain access to accounts related to the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton. Technological unemployment is the loss of jobs caused by technological change. These kinds of changes would include labor-saving machines or improved efficiency for processes. Either of those permits the same amount of work to be done by fewer people. Online shopping sites are reducing the number of brick and mortar stores, and that eliminates lots of jobs for clerks, cashiers, physical presences in physical stores. The internet has also created new methods for beginning new businesses. Many would-be entrepreneurs are using the internet to ask large numbers of people for small investments or donations to help provide capital to open businesses. This practice is known as crowdfunding. Kickstarter.com is the best known crowdfunding platform. The company's stated mission is to help bring creative projects to life. The internet has also had a deep impact on education. It has revolutionized the way education is imparted. Classrooms have been brought right into the homes of the students. There's little doubt that the internet has become an engine of progress and has had an extremely important effect on education. It has created a whole new approach to online education. The web technology has made it easy for students all over the world to gain skills they need to progress in society and enhance their lifestyles. Students are becoming proficient with computers and the internet at much younger ages. It motivates many students to acquire better thinking skills, to remain well informed, and grow as responsible citizens for their countries. The vast majority of middle and high school student teachers who are involved in high-level education programs say the internet has a major impact on their ability to access content and resources for their teaching. Distance education or long distance learning is the education of students
who may not always be physically present in a school. Distance learning originated from the authoring of correspondence courses where students communicated by mail. Today, the development of computerized communication has made online education not only possible, but common. In the United States in 2011, it was found that a third of all the students enrolled in post-secondary education had taken at least one accredited online course in a post-secondary institution. For those who have access to the right technology, there's evidence that learning online can be effective in a number of ways. Some research shows that on average, students retain 25 to 60% more material when learning online as compared to learning in a classroom, mostly due to the ability of the students to learn faster online. E-learning requires 40 to 60% less time to learn than in a traditional classroom setting because students can learn at their own pace. They can go back and reread when they need to. They can skip or accelerate through contents if they choose.
Even before COVID-19, there had been a high growth and adoption in education technology. And of course, there's been a surge in usage since the pandemic began. While some believe that the unplanned and rapid move to online learning, with little training, insufficient bandwidth, and little preparation, will result in a poor user experience that's not conducive to sustained growth, others believe that a new hybrid model of education is going to emerge and it's going to have significant benefits. There are challenges. Some students just don't have reliable internet access and or technology, and these students struggle to participate in digital learning. In the US, there's a significant gap between those from privileged and disadvantaged backgrounds. While virtually all 15-year-olds from privileged backgrounds said they had a computer to work on, nearly 25% of those from disadvantaged backgrounds did not. Lots of people are concerned that the pandemic is just going to widen the digital divide. Net neutrality is the principle that the internet service providers should treat all data on the internet equally. They should not discriminate or charge differently by user or content or website or platform or application or type of attached equipment or method of communication. Under these principles, internet service providers should not intentionally block, slow down, or charge extra for specific websites or online content. This is sometimes enforced through government mandate.